Hello again, this is Bill Jones with recapturefederalism.com. Coming in again from Freedom's Nest. Always coming in from Freedom's Nest. Not the only one in the country's Freedom's Nest. A free person, man or woman, you have your own Freedom's Nest. I have mine. And that's where we're talking to you from today. We're going to be talking about communism again. Always talking about communism. I do that all the time. Trying to get more people to talk about communism. We're going to be talking today. It's going to be all a, what we call it, slide video. It's really a video slides today. And the title of it is Democratic Party equals Communist Party. Oh man, Bill, that's so controversial. Yeah, it is. It's the truth, though. And that's what you got. You got to be talking about it. I'm not afraid to talk about it. I guess I'm so old, don't make any difference. Going to do the oath right away. I always do the oath. To get the administration out of the way. I, Waymar Jones, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, so help me God. And as I say, been saying that oath long time. First took it July 1965 when I joined the Navy. I was already anti-communist by then, but in July 1965 I took it. Communists was the enemy then. They're the enemy now. Until they're all purged and gone, they will continue to be the enemy. People don't want you to say that. Well, I say it because it's the truth. And we'll be getting into today talking about it. I have two sayings that I always say, and you'll hear them again in here where they come from. They come from the Communist Manifesto. And we're going to be talking a lot about the Communist Manifesto today. But let me reiterate them because they are the core. There are besides eternal truths such as freedom, justice, I was adding liberty, etc., that are common to all states of society, but communism abolishes eternal truth. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis, it therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. And I say historical experience with communism. That's page 26, Communist Manifesto. Past historical experience of communism. We're going to be talking about it today as violence, death, enslavement. That's all they're good for. That's what they're good for. So when you hear these Democratic presidential candidates, they're communist. It's where Democratic parties come from. Communism. The other big saying I have, and you'll hear me say it later on when we're in the Communist Manifesto also, but it's a core one. Page 34, Communist Manifesto. Finally, they labor everywhere for the union and agreement of the democratic parties of all countries. That's right. That's what we're talking about. Democratic parties equal communist parties. And it further states, next paragraph, the communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling classes tremble at the communistic revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries unite. Page 34 of the Communist Manifesto. We'll talk about that. Communist Manifesto. It's also going to talk about short piece on the Democratic platform 1856, 1860. They reiterate what they said in 1856. And they talk about Democratic Party and democracy. We are not a democracy. The United States is we're not even a single republic, to be honest with you. People talk and say, well, we're a single republic. We're a republic. No, we're a compound republic. We have federal republic, and each state is their own republic, has their own republican form of government, principles by the state, their own individual constitutions, republic. They are republics, compound republics. There's 51 right now. And whenever Puerto Rico gets in, there'll be 52. But they're making up their, as we speak, they better be making up their constitution. You got to have a constitution because you're a republic. Compound republic, 51 of them, and they're all under the umbrella of the Confederacy, all in accordance with Federalist Paper 51. And with that, we'll continue on. As I say, the topic today and the title is Democratic Party equals a Communist Party. In relationship to the Communist Manifesto from 1848, we're first going to review the Communist Confession of Faith, which comes from 1847, the works of Frederick Engels. It was a imitation of Lutheran Confession of Faith, initially to use a catechismal form. Both Engels and Marx decided within the next year, a year following this, they would divert away from that and go to a more non-religious form, even though it is still a religious form. What they have is within the Communist Manifesto, they have the principles of communism. But in 1847, Engels did this. He asked 22 questions. I won't go into all of them in this particular presentation, documentary. We'll just start some areas, and we're going to talk about the discussion of democratic parties, democratic constitutions, and it's listed in here, so we won't go into deep. Are you a communist? The first question, yes. They eliminate that later on and try and keep their secrecy, whether they're members or not. Only a few of them will come out, and, like your Bill Ayers. Some of the few that do come out, they come out and want to be openly known to be a communist. Most of them choose not to do that. You'll see question 3, how you wish to keep this aim. What is the aim of communist? Which is in 2. Question 3 is how you wish to achieve this aim. By elimination of private property and its replacement by community property. And that's real big with communism. You'll see that throughout the Communist Manifesto and other teachings. That's what they want to do and work with that. We'll go now farther down, and we'll want to go to question 15, and where they're asking about we find it here. Do you intend to replace the existing social order by community property at one stroke? And again, here they're asking about this property, eliminating private property and having the community property. social order. They talk about it in greater detail in the principles of communism the following year. Then question 16, you'll see right down here. How do you think the transition from the present situation to the community of property is to be affected? The answer first, the first fundamental condition for the introduction of community property is a political liberation of the proletariat through a democratic constitution. And this is through world communism. It's the whole idea of a democratic constitution. We, of course, in the United States don't have a democratic constitution. They're trying to utilize one now, and you'll hear these professors talk about our present constitution as irrelevant. Well, it's not irrelevant. They believe it's irrelevant. They're working it for it to be irrelevant. But the truth of the matter is, it's a Republican constitution. We have in fact, we don't even have a single Republic constitution. We have a compound. We have each state has 50 constitutions, states, and the federal state. That's as it's configured under the Federalist Papers 51. Then on question 17, what will be your first measure once you have established a democracy? Well, they're talking about establishing a democracy everywhere. The United States is not a democracy. It's not, at least it's not a pure democracy. It's so stated by James Madison, Federalist Papers 10. We are not a democracy. We're a compound republic within the framework of a confederation. Again, you'll see in question 18, how will they do this? Well, they have 3 planks there. Then I'll have 10 planks at a later time, you'll see, and then another 13 at another time, and 17 demands. 17 demands later on, including separation of church and state. That's their big idea. They can't handle the competition with religion. So they need to do away with all religions, discard them. Here you have the 3 primary planks that they have by limiting private property in such a way that it gradually prepares the way for its transformation into social property, e.g. by progressive taxation, limitation of the right of inheritance in favor of a state, etc., etc. They'll get more specific with these later on. By employing workers in national workshops and factories and on national estates, and by educating all children at the expense of the state. This is what their primary thing is, how to do this. 19, how we arrange this kind of education during the period of transition. Again, transition, liberation, see all these communist words, that's loaded language of communism. All children be educated in state establishments from the time that they can without their first maternal care. So that's how they're going to do it. They have some other things which we'll get into later. And here they go, do communists reject existing religions? It's a big question. They want to get rid of abolish eternal truths, abolish all religions, and all morality. And that's on page 26 of the Communist Manifesto. But they're talking about this. A year before that, they're talking about this. And they're talking about it supersedes them, and they will change that, and we'll see it later on, where they say it disappears. This is the last question, 22, and we'll proceed then into the Communist Manifesto next. We're now into the Communist Manifesto. We're in Chapter 2, Proletarians and Communists. We'll go into this just peruse this area where we can see some of the areas. Here we see, let us now take the wage labor. And they talk about the average price of wage labor is the minimum wage, i.e. the quantum of means of subsistence which is solely requisite to keep the laborer in bare existence as a laborer. They talk about this all the time. And it has to do primarily with slavery, because that's what they want to do, is enslave people. They talk and they utilize people and they use them to for them to be the control, the masters controlling everything. And they want to have the bourgeois, the middle class, they want them lowered down to the lower classes. Everyone's a lower class, and then of course you have the masters. It's a confidence game. This is where I get in from my American Communist Theocracy, the Great Tribulation and confidence game. And that's all it is. It's a confidence game. And that's what they do. You talk about slavery and what have you. And that's how they do that. You'll see in the middle of the page here, abolition of the family, even the most radical flare-up at this infamous proposal of the communist. Well, they talk about that. You have Hillary Clinton writing a book, It Takes a Village. Yeah, well, it takes a village because the family, they're going to destroy the family. Just as they destroyed the family when they had slavery in this country. Slavery, wherever you have communists, it's part of their system. Here again, we're on page 25. Up here, I'm talking about the bourgeoisie, middle class, bourgeois marriage. The whole idea is to get rid of that. Same-sex marriage. Destroy the traditional marriage. They get into that deeper and, under the principles of communism. We'll look at that later. World communism is control by the world communist masters. And that's what you're talking about. Also, abolishing down here. The communists are further reproached with desiring to abolish countries and nationality. That's what they're doing. Here we have the supremacy of the proletariat will cause them to vanish still further. United action, the leading civilized countries, at least, is one of the first conditions of the emancipation of the proletariat. Political party supremacy, that's what they're doing. Also, charges against communism made from a religious or philosophical and generally from an ideological standpoint are not deserving of serious examination. They don't need to prove anything. They say what they do, and that's it. Their religious supremacy, they do and say what they want to do, and not to be questioned. And here on page 26, I always read this, it's very important. There are besides eternal truths such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society. But communism abolishes eternal truth. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis, it therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experiences. And how do they do that? They do that through democratic constitutions, democracy. They play their funny little games. They lie a lot. But that's what their primary goal is. It's what you do. You abolish all religion, all eternal truths, and all morality. And that's how you work. Also, they'll have the original, I'm not going to get to them too much, but the original 10 planks are also on this page. Again, back to abolition of property and land and the application of all rents of all land to public purposes. BLM. You deal out there with the Bundy Ranch. Some other problems out there in the western states, not only with Nevada, but in Arizona. We have people fighting, standing up, saying, we ain't going to do it. We ain't going to pay no more federal taxes. It's all going to go to the state. And that's where you need to stand up. But have, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. That's where I get to hear this idea of progressive is communism. It is. It's all here. It's all here in the book. And how do they do that? They do this with democratic centralism, which shows up later on in I've done some other presentations with the guidelines of the Communist Party's 1921 democratic centralism. That's how they do all of this stuff, along with propaganda and agitation, class struggle, and all this. It's all part of that. That's the strategies and the technical stuff of how they do it. Is that stuff later on. And here you have this, after the 10 planks, when in the course of development class distinctions have disappeared and all production has been concentrated in the hands of a vast association of a whole nation, public power will lose its political character. Political power, property, so-called, this merely organized power of one class for oppressing the other. Right down to the nitty-gritty of the masters controlling everything. And they control everything, just like they do in China. The ones making there's one or two billionaires that are not party leaders, but no, the party leaders, they're the ones. 10 of the top 12 are the richest people in the world, the richest people in China. The lower people, lower classes, no middle class. You get some rich people up there that are all working with the party. They're making the bucks. They're making the bucks. Here you see it visual, page 31 of the Communist Manifesto. There's a area here where they have the conservative bourgeois socialism together. That's where the enemies are of the Communist Manifesto. The Communist Manifesto, everyone's either an enemy or a friend. Just as Christ has his saying, he who is not with me is against me. The communists have theirs also, their saying, which is either you're with them or you're not, you're against them. And this is, they specifically talk about the conservative or bourgeois, the middle class. They are the enemies, they are the ruling class in America, and they are the enemy of the socialist and the communist. And so they're out to get the conservatives, Tea Party people, anyone who is against them. In short, the communists everywhere support every revolutionary movement against the existing social and political order of things. They've been doing that since 1848. They say it right here in the Communist Manifesto. All these movements they bring to the front as the leading question is each property question, no matter what the degree of development at the time. And they've been doing it in the United States. They've had a revolutionary insurrection, and the revolutionary movement been going on violently, either violently or passively violent, since for the last 129 years. The first case is still pending. The city of Chicago still gives glowing terms to their Haymarket Square, the assassination of 7 police officers, Chicago policemen, in 1886 on May 4th. The city of Chicago still gives it glowing. They talk about it. How wonderful it is. These people, when working men of all countries unite. And that's what they did. That's what they talk about now in this monument that they have set up at the site of the Haymarket Square, 175 North Des Plaines. And this is what I always read. Finally, they labor everywhere for the union and agreement of democratic parties of all countries. The communists disdain this to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing conditions. That the ruling classes tremble at the communistic revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries unite. And they openly talk about Haymarket Square and the right of a working man to be not peacefully, but to right of to assemble. They don't say peacefully. They leave that word out because it wasn't too peaceful then. But that's what they have going on. Agreement of democratic parties of all countries, a union of democratic parties. That's what it's all about, class warfare. Now we get into the heart of the Communist Manifesto, the principles of communism. This is what replaced the 1847 works of Frederick Engel and the Communist Confession of Faith. We now have the principles of communism, which build off of those 22 questions. I think it's like 25 or 26 questions in here, some of them the same. You notice they've switched this, you're a communist. Now, what is a communism? And it is a doctrine, the conditions of liberation of the proletariat. Liberation, you'll see the words liberation, transition, fundamental change, all those words. You'll hear them used throughout the American society now by the communists. They're pushing for all the same thing, class warfare, class struggle. It's all the same thing. We go through all the way down to question 14. There's all these other questions. May go over them again other places. They may not be as strong as some of these other ones. You get into 14 through 24, I guess it is. Very strong used. Now, what does this new social order have to be like? Well, it's world communism. They may not come right out and say this stuff, but they talk about all these things. They talk about, in other words, abolish competition, replace it with association. Talk about down here in this last paragraph in this section. In fact, the abolition of private property is doubtless the shortest and most significant way to characterize the revolution in the whole social order, which has been made necessary by the development of industry, and for this reason it is rightly advanced by the communists as their main demand, and that is getting rid of private property, turning it over into the property of the state, what they refer to as community property or state property. Then we have number 18. What is the course of this revolution? Above all, it will establish a democratic constitution, and through this, the direct and indirect dominance of the proletariat. They talk about it in England and Germany and what have you. They also talk about it in the United States, also America as they refer to it. They go to the following paragraph: democracy would be wholly valueless to the proletariat if it were not immediately used as means of putting through measures directed against private property, ensuring the livelihood of the proletariat. The main measure emerging as necessary result of existing relations are the following. And then they have 13 again planks. We had 10 before, we have another 13 here. Some are the same, some are similar, some are different wording, some are a little deeper in the meaning of this, but it's all part of the same thing. It is impossible, of course, to carry out all these measures at once, but one would always bring the others in the wake. Once the first radical attack on private property has been launched, the proletariat will find itself forced to go further, to concentrate increasing in the hands of the state all capital, all agriculture, all transport, all trade. All the foregoing measures are directed to the end. They will become the practical and feasible, capable of producing their centralizing effects to precisely the degree that the proletariat, through its labor, multiplies the country's productive force. Finally, when all capital, all production, and all exchange have been brought together in the hands of the nation, private property will disappear of its own accord, money will become superfluous, and production will expand, and man so change that society will be able to slough off whatever its old economic habits may remain. And that's where we're going. That's what is being done. They're working towards the final solution, and the final solution is once they get the guns away from the people. That is the final solution. Don't get rid of the guns, whatever you do. That's the final solution. We have to work now on stopping things, and you can do that. The law is in our favor. The Constitution's in our favor, and we need to work at it. Will it be possible, number 19, will it be possible for this revolution to take place in one country alone? No. No, by creating the world market, big industry has already brought all the peoples of the earth, especially civilized peoples, into such close relationship with one another that none is independent of what happens to the others. You need world communism. You need China. That's why a kiss of death was working with the Chinese, opening up their market. They have most of our jobs to keep the peace in their country. They had to do that. They had to have that, and that's how they worked at. They also talk about what the consequence of the ultimate disappearance of private property. Again, that's their big demand: private property. Private property. What will be the influence in the communist society on the family? And you're seeing that now. Same-sex marriage. It's the destruction of the traditional marriage. It will transform the relations between the sexes into a purely private matter which concerns only the persons involved, and into which the society has no occasion to intervene. It can do this since it does away with private property and educates children on a communal basis, and in this way removes the two bases of traditional marriage: the dependence rooted in private property of the woman on the man and of the children on the parents. And here is the answer to the outcry of the highly moral Philistines against the community of women. Community of women is a condition which belongs entirely to the bourgeois society, which today finds a complete expression in prostitution. but prostitution is based on private property and falls with it. The communal society, instead of introducing the community of women, it in fact abolishes it. The communist society abolishes the community of women. The war on women is that and what do they hear? You hear the lies, the communist propaganda lies. Everybody else is the war on women. No, the communists are. They do that by their works. Then we have these next two paragraphs, questions. 22, what would be the attitude of the communists to existing nationalities? Nationalities of the people associating themselves according with the principle of community will be compelled to mingle with each other as a result of this association, and thereby dissolve themselves, just as the various estate and class distinctions must disappear through abolition of their basis of private property. No border controls along the border down with Mexico. That's what this is all about. It's communism. And question 23, what will be the attitude of the existing religions? I didn't read 22 on the old communist confession of faith, but I'm going to read this one because it's very significant. All religion so far has been expressions of the historical stages of development of individual people or groups of people, but communism is a stage of historical development which makes all existing religions superfluous and brings about their disappearance. That's what it's all about. Communist suppression, supremacy, religious supremacy, political supremacy, supremacy of everything. That's how they enslave people. That's what it's all about, is enslavement. And this last thing, question 25, what is the attitude of the communists to the other political parties of our time? And this was in relation to 1848. It's still, apparently, still very important. In America, where democratic constitutions have been established, the communists must make the common cause with the party which will turn this constitution against the bourgeoisie and use it in the interest of the proletariat. That is, with the agrarian national reformers. That was in 1840. Especially up in Minnesota, you had the Farmers Democratic Party. They've gone and they've taken the Republican principles of America, the federal system of America, and turned them on their heads. They have totally used those things, reworded them. They still exist. They're violating laws. And they don't talk about treason at all. But in America, where a democratic constitution has already been established, it hasn't already been established. It may exist, and they may say that it exists, but it's not what's there in the Federalist 51. That's where the laws favor the people if they can take a stand, and they have to take a stand if they want to exist. Now we're going to talk about America itself and the relationship that it has with the Communist Manifesto. The Communist Manifesto is, of course, from 1848. That's when it was formalized. A lot of that, the basis for the Communist Manifesto comes from before that period of time, even around the time of the U.S. Constitution and the founders and the framers doing that. There was some discussion about political parties. You don't see any political parties. Political parties do not have a legal basis or authority to operate in the United States. George Washington, in the farewell address, talks about it. It says if you people want it, the American people want it, they have to have an amendment. There's been no amendment. There is no legal basis or authority for political parties to operate. And yes, they started to operate early on. They weren't a Democratic Party initially, but that's where they then became later on. There was a Federalist Party. There was a Democrat Republican Party, and then in 1828 there was a move to the Democratic Party and the formation in 1828. However, they were not truly a Democratic Party until 1856. What you see up now on the screen is a Democratic Party platform, June 18th, 1860. In your first paragraph, you'll see that it reverts back to 1856. So the entire basis resolved that we, the democracy of the Union, the convention assembled, talking 1856. They're talking about the Democratic Party. They're talking about they'll abide by the division of the Supreme Court, but they're already violating the ideas of the federal system of America. The Republican principles of America is set forth in Federalist 51. Of course, this is before the Civil War. They would be defeated in the Civil War by the Republicans. Biggest mistake they make. They allow them to exist after the Civil War. They're allowed to exist, allowed to expand, and they've done that. They have a lot of principles, these progressivism and things of this sort. They're all part of the same thing. The Democratic Party, their expansions, democratic centralism. And that's what has occurred now. All the way to what we have now is the power and the lies. And they're looking for the final solution, that is to take the guns away. That's the final solution. Beware of the final solution. The end. From the class warfare, the final solution is slavery. And a subject I really love to get into is concerning the Haymarket Memorial, Haymarket Square riot, anarchy, however you want to talk about it. It's interesting that the city of Chicago, Cook County, Illinois, one of the most segregated towns politically, with political supremacy, political party supremacy by the Democrats. And I'm going to show you how it evolves and how it has developed and evolved over the years. I showed you the platform from 1860. Haymarket Square riots, May 4th, 1886. By the way, it's not the only riot that day. There were some killings, labor killings up north of Chicago, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the same day. But getting back to Haymarket Square, significant death of police officers. And the city of Chicago has put up this Haymarket Memorial. And it's, you see it there, the picture of it. It's at 175 North Des Street. That's where the actual event occurred in 1886. I'll show you some posters later on. A tragedy of international significance. You won't see a word here at all about communism at all. You should. It's all about world communism. Workers of the world unite. Read some of that stuff from the Communist Manifesto, 1848. First paragraph here. A tragedy of international significance. On the evening of May 4th, 1886, a tragedy of international significance unfolded in Chicago's Haymarket Produce District. An outdoor meeting had been hastily organized by anarchist activists to protest the violent death of workers during the labor lockout the previous day in another area of the city. Spectators gathered in the street as speakers addressed political, social, and labor issues from atop a freight wagon from the adjacent factory, when approximately 175 police approached in order to disperse the meeting. A dynamite bomb was thrown into their ranks. The identity and affiliation of a person who threw the bomb has never been determined. This anonymous act had many victims. Wow. Now, they say nobody... I'm going to continue to read this, but they say nobody was identified. Yet there were 4 people hanged, others charged. The person that believed to have had thrown the bomb or made the bomb got away, left the country, went to Germany. So this idea that they weren't identified somehow is just, like they just happened to be there, just happened to have a bomb and throw a bomb. Well, that's not true. That's not true. Next paragraph. Aftermath of the trial. Aftermath of the Haymarket riot. Due to the blast and panic that followed, 7 policemen and at least 4 civilian bystanders lost their lives. But the victims of the incident were not limited to those who died as a direct result of the bombing. In the aftermath, those who organized and spoke at the meeting and others who held unpopular political viewpoints were arrested, unfairly tried, and in some cases sentenced to death. Even none could be tied to the bombing itself. Again, even though there was another bombing, not bombing, but another demonstration where labor people killed the same day up in Milwaukee. And days previous, that there have been labor people killed. Oh, we're going to have another riot. Another insurrection. The insurrection continuing. It continues, it started then, it's continuing now. But, they make it sound, well, just happened. And really, not really that bad. 7 cops killed. They were assassinated. Because they were breaking it up. Because there was a need to disperse these people. There's potential danger of people being killed. And it turns out there were 7 police officers killed. A powerful symbol. This is in the last paragraph I'm going to read. A powerful symbol. Over the years, the site of the Haymarket bombing has become a powerful symbol for a diverse cross-section of people, ideals, and movements. Its significant touches on the issues of free speech, the right of public assembly, organized labor, the fight for the 8-hour workday, law enforcement, justice, anarchy, and the right of every human being to pursue an equitable and prosperous life for all is poignant lesson in the rewards and consequences inherent in such human pursuits. Wow. There were 7 police officers that were assassinated trying to stop an illegal gathering that had potential for violence, and then they produced violence. Now, they say here, let me see here, the right of public assembly. That's not what the Constitution says. Here we have a flagrant violation of what the Constitution rights of people are. They have you believing that this is just a public, a right of public assembly. That's not what the Constitution calls, does it? Let me get that section here, First Amendment. The right of people to peacefully to assemble. The right of people peacefully to assemble. There's no peaceful assembly here. I'm going to show you some brochure flyers that they sent out and around. There were a couple of them. They revised one because it talked about revenge. This is a communist movement. You notice they say movements. Cross-section of people, ideals, and movements. It's a communist movement. Communists aren't very friendly people to start out with. They intended violence, and they got violence. Now there's another police monument, been bombed 7 times or moved 7 times total. I guess you can go to chicagocop.org and see they have a whole page regarding that. I've brought up in past in previous presentations, documentaries. I got out of the Navy, active duty, October 1st, 1969. 5 days later, they would bomb the communist weathermen. They didn't call them communist weathermen. They don't call people communist anyway. You can't call them communist, but they're communist. The people you have running for president in the Democratic Party, they're communist. Okay? Hillary and Bernie and these other ones. And some aren't as communist as others. But Hillary and Bernie, they're heavy-duty commies. Okay? What she does with this the email thing with the State Department is directly related to the guidelines of the Communist Party 1921, Section 8, Roman numeral 8, combination of legal and illegal work is Class 9 secret stuff. It's all part of that. Sure it is. And they, we can't talk, it's politics. It's politics, all right, it's communism. That's what it is. Now, let me go, I'll get the other slides we have regarding the revenge and things. This is one of the flyers that were sent out the day of the night before and the day of the riots. It was going to be the insurrection that they had, communist insurrection. Working men to arms, revenge. Now, you think there's going to be any violence? There's going to be violence? Sure there is. They're planning for it. They're planning for it. Then here's the other flyer that's out, original one. Working men, arm yourselves and appear in full force, Executive Committee. Yeah, they're planning on insurrection violence. But you would have the city of Chicago would have you believe that just, oh, these poor people. They hung some of them, and they tried them, and they did all this stuff because they were good people, and they shouldn't have happened. No, they're communist. They were communist. They were some. They say later. Um, this is a flyer that was out later and doesn't talk about it. But they had already set the stage that they were already making the bombs. Now they're trying to protect themselves. No, this was a planned deal. It's planned then, planned in 1848, all the way. It's still going on. The insurrection and the revolutionary movement still going on. The movement's still going on. They lie to you. They lie to you. The Democrats lie to you. In the city of Chicago, they have a political party supremacy going on right now. If you're seeing this any place other than my website, if you come to my website, sign up, subscribe, see what we have going on. Right now it's all free. Somewhere along the line I'm going to be doing some documentaries, and these documentaries will then be probably for sale and what have you on Amazon. Try and keep everything as much as we can free. Education is paramount to what I do and other people do regarding this. We're silenced. We can't say anything about communism, what have you. But if you come, sign up, find out more stuff coming out, seeing. And with that, good day.